Okay, so I'm from Lewes District Council in England, a small district council of around 100,000 people. Our presentation is around some early ideas, and we're talking about how perhaps working at local level, you can have a more direct conversation with the public than at the national and international level. And one of the things we wanted to start with was, I'm a public servant. I've been a public servant all my working life. And I'm working with politicians across the political spectrum who all feel that the disconnect isn't just between the public talking to local government, but that politicians feel in Britain, in particular at local level, that they've lost a lot of the reason they came into politics, which was to have constructive conversations with the public and was to try and design good ideas. For many of the local politicians, they feel that they are only able to meet the public when there's a crisis or a negative campaign, and they're already put in a defensive position. And in Lewes District, across the political spectrum, that's not what the politicians felt they were giving their time up. Most of the time, the politicians give a substantial amount of time for quite a small amount of pay, and they did it because they wanted to connect and make the services better at a local level. And like many countries, we're looking at austerity measures and further cuts. So we see a better conversation as a way of engaging members and public servants with the public in a more positive way. Obviously, you can't co-design without your citizens. We're quite lucky in Lewes. We have people who've got lots of interest. We have very connected groups of citizens, particularly around environmental issues. But recently, when we had to do a national piece of consultation on asking people on lower incomes to make financial contribution to their council tax benefits, the response back from people in Lewes was that they didn't want to do that, that they'd rather give their own time through volunteering or other sorts of programs to help people, particularly young people, get back into work. So instead of just saying, well, we have to do it anyway, that's one of the pieces of work we then started to do around how you can work and how the local authority can work with communities to come up with ideas which we might not directly fund, but which can help people get back into work. Because the expertise is in the community just as much as in the local government. The programme we're going to talk about a little bit is around food waste and trying to double our recycling rates within 12 months. For an area that was very keen on environmental issues, we had low recycling rates. The previous kind of bureaucratic answer had been we didn't have the budgets to bring in different pieces of work to improve recycling. Central government talks about nudge, where you try to take away something, make it a bit harder to make people recycle more. But we came up with a programme where we said we don't need to do that. We're not going to do that. Everyone's ready to work with us, so we'll just co-design the way we do our recycling projects. And the idea behind it is you come in as far as you want to. We are co-designing the press releases, the blogging. There's a competition where you can win up to £40,000 for your community. That's all based on how much recycling you get done in your area. The local towns and parishes are working with us, and there's quite a competitive spirit. But of course, it also is about us talking to people where they want to talk, and they're now discussing other issues with us as they gain trust in the way we're working. I'm going to hand over to Anthony for the next bit, the challenge.
So when we started working with Lewes District Council, the challenge that we were set was to try both to achieve this very specific service-related goal of increasing recycling rates, but to do it in a way that created networks and relationships that could be maintained for other purposes. One of the problems that we see in a democratic society with the way in which government interacts with citizens is that individual initiatives build relationships and build sets of contacts, and then they forget them. And the next time government talks to you, it's as if you're someone they've never met before. It's like a kind of short-term memory loss. And one of the problems that we see with that is that it prevents a conversational relationship between the state and the citizen, and it turns it into a transactional relationship that I might have with the railway or the supermarket, where I go in and I'm a new customer every time. So we wanted to grow the ambition of local people to support the actions that we were talking about on food waste reduction, but also to come up with their own actions. And I think that one of the lessons that we draw from the work we've done is that it's a lot easier to engage people on an issue that they are already passionate about and to keep them engaged, because that is something that is, that they will willingly use their spare time for. We have tried to find ways of using free tools and simple information to get people over the barrier to participation very quickly. And I think one of the things that we've learned in the first 3 to 6 months of this project is that we need to push the ambition message even further. So it isn't enough just to say, come and co-design the way that we approach food waste, because there are people who are interested in food waste, but frankly, not everyone and not many. So what we need to do is to turn that conversation around and say, come and work with us to create a new way of delivering public services, the first one of which is food waste, and to make sure that when we talk about citizen engagement and participation and participatory efforts, we're not bringing in people who want to repaint the park bench. We're bringing in people who want to replan and redesign the way in which the entire parks service is designed. So the reason that we're able to do this in Lewes, and this is absolutely essential, is that there is cross-party support and cross-organisation support. Government at every level, local or national, is an enormously complicated thing. And if you imagine it as a series of interactions between the public and the citizen, even if 10% of your interactions are civic and active and participative and friendly, that still means that 90% of them are bureaucratic and frustrating and annoying. And what we are trying to do is to create something that goes through the Lewes District Council as an organisation and refocuses it around supporting citizen action as much as delivering services. Now that's a really radical vision, and without Jenny's support and without the support of the leader and the other politicians on the council, we wouldn't have a chance. So one of the things that struck me from the plenary session this morning, if you were there, was the talk about how we needed this kind of reinvention of democracy for the digital age, rather than ways to use internet tools for democracy. I think that you need the reinvention of government for the digital age as much as you need that reinvention of democracy. So this is what we're trying to do in Lewes, and I think that the early results have shown that switch to a general message of engagement should bring in a much larger audience than the food waste related messages have so far, and that's the task for the next 18 months. But the most important part for me is that what we're trying to create is 2 new institutions. The thing that I've seen now at 10 or 11 conferences is this idea that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Right? Culture is more important than strategy, because a strategy is a document and a culture is the way you do things here. And I think that's absolutely right. Culture beats tools, culture beats strategy, but the best thing is a culturated institution. An institution is a way of working that has the right culture built into it. And one of the reasons that I'm really pleased that we're presenting alongside our friends from the Citizens Foundation is that their way of working with openness and with participation and with something that is completely about the connectedness and the connectiveness of different systems is absolutely essential, I think. So we're trying to build in Lewes a new district council that's focused on a citizen-focused conversation and citizen support. But we're also trying to build ourselves as an institution, because if we're going to have a new sort of participation, then we need to have organisations that can create and hold that democratic conversation. Now, we're not very far into this project, and I wouldn't say that we were the ultimate in this sort of organisation, but I think everywhere does need those people who can independently hold and create democratic conversations. So I'm really glad to be part of this, this virtual agro session where we can talk about that. Thank you.